What is the scariest story you know that is 100 true? My mom was driving, and a guy ran out in the road, so she stopped so she couldn't hit him. It was night time, so it was pretty dark out, and 3 other men emerged from the forest around, all trying to use the door handles of her car to get in. She locked them luckily, and gassed it to the nearest town. Remember to always lock your car after you start it, because if it wasn't unlocked, who knows what would have happened to her. Artemis Pyle, the drummer from Lynyrd Skynyrd, survived a plane crash and walked to a nearby house only to be shot by the homeowner. The homeowner saw a bloody long-haired man and winged him. Pyle survived that as well and made a full recovery. I spent my first 10 years in New Delhi. Back then, we would find dead women burnt with acid or set on fire, and it used to be so normal. Like, oh look, another one of those dowry cases where her family didn't pay the husband enough money so they killed her. Many years later I revisited those memories and realized how insane that actually was. I'd totally forgotten about all that. Old janitor from high school, friendly Ecuadorian man who went by Ping. Worked at the school for 20 years and nobody had a problem with him. I guess his wife was leaving him and in the process of moving out. He caught her in bed with her new man. Next day, in the middle of town, he opened fire on her, the man, and then killed himself before any cops had time to respond. My friend tripped and fell onto the tracks, landing his face onto the 3rd rail. We kinda stood there in absolute shock because we thought he was dead, but then he said, "Can I move? Will I be electrocuted?" We told him to move instantly and he did. We got him off the tracks, and no less than 2 minutes later a train went zipping by. I think the 3rd rail turned on seconds after his face came off of it. I know that's not scary to a lot of people, but to me it was because I would have lost a close friend back when I was about 12. That there's a guy casing the bar that I work at literally right now, and I can't do anything to stop him. He's been in asking what time days we're open, and what days we have security. Caught him feeling the corners of our windows and doors too. Unfortunately, until he breaks in and robs us, the police won't do a thing. A guy I worked with was riding his dirt bike through the woods and somebody hung a cable between 2 trees. My buddy caught his throat on it and saw the dude steal his dirt bike. Woke up in the hospital with a lacerated throat and a broken larynx. Pretty crazy what somebody will do for something so cheap. Nutty Putty Cave in Utah was sealed up in 2009 after John Jones was trapped upside down in a small crevice while spelunking. When rescue teams finally arrived, he had been upside down for so long that his legs were drained of blood. The only possible way to have gotten him out was to break his legs, which would have sent him into fatal shock. He died after being trapped for 28 hours. His body's still in the cave. Amateur rugby. Guy gets hit pretty hard and dislocates his hip. While waiting for the ambulance, a guy runs up saying he's a physio and can at least relocate the joint. He cracks the hip back into its socket and the guy SCIAMS. One of his testicles had been jolted out of place in the accident and had been chilling out in the empty hip socket. Squish. Happened to me, have posted about it before. I was around 11 years old and I woke up in the middle of the night to a man straddled on top of me with his hand over my mouth and nose. He told me to roll over and not scream. I rolled onto the floor and tried to scream bloody murder. I say tried cause when you are truly terrified it can take a second to find your voice. My mom heard me screaming and came in and fought with the guy. He was at least 6, she was 5 feet 3 inches, and scared him enough with the fighting and screaming that he took off out the window he had come in through. Never did catch him. My brother's ex-GF had 2 older sisters. They died before she was born. One day they decided to play hide and seek or something, so anyway, they both climbed inside a chest and accidentally locked themselves in. They suffocated. My long-term partner decided to end his life suddenly and unexpectedly a few years ago. He was the happiest person I knew, and even with 2020 hindsight, videos, pouring through old messages etc., I wouldn't be able to identify any warning signs. This user's comments have been overwritten to protest spares and Reddit's actions that will end third-party access and damage the community. One of my friends had someone following her home, hiding in the bushes so they couldn't be seen. She booked it to her house, got inside, and he was watching the house from the outside. She called the cops. They come along quietly and got the jump on him. He had condoms, handcuffs, and a knife. When they got his DNA, it turned out that he was linked to a half-dozen rapes in the area. She credits her regimen of running sprints to outrunning him that night and firmly believes she would have been raped if she couldn't outrun him then. My mom went to school with a guy who raped and murdered a few girls in her town. When they finally caught the guy, they found a list he had made of his targets. My mom was next on the list. During World War II, an American airplane crashed near the Japanese island of Chichijima. There were 9 servicemen on board. 1 was rescued by an American submarine. The other 8 were taken in by the Japanese. Don't want to go into all the details, but through some time and events, the Japanese ended up eating those servicemen. But that's not the weird part. The one serviceman who was rescued. That was George H.W. Bush. Google Chichijima incident for more details if you'd like. A family friend was cleaning her bus before the bus run. She had 2 small kids who were strapped into car seats in the bus. She swept the floor and was standing outside the bus leaning in, using a dustpan and brush to collect the dirt she had swept up. The auto doors on the bus kicked in and closed on her neck. She suffocated while her 2 young children looked on, unable to do anything because they couldn't undo their car seat buckles. 80-year-old dude at my grandfather's church went swimming when he was a kid in an old mining quarry with his cousin. They were both kids like 7 to 10. Long story short, the some mine or air bubble down below the water opened up and swallowed the cousin. He had to walk back home and tell his family. They got a search and rescue down there and could never find the boy. My cuckoo clock, that is broken for more than 20 years, made weird sounds 2 times in a row in the middle of the night. Japanese war crimes in WW2. That is my real answer, but it does remind me of that movie with Paul Rudd where they're talking about scary stories around the campfire and he says something like, "Everyday children like you are kidnapped and sold into child sex trafficking rings." The people that bought my childhood home were murdered. The man that killed then snuck in and out of the house for a week. He would often slip into the house and be there for hours. He would hide in places that I knew. I knew them because as a kid those were the best spots to hide for hide and seek. My favorite hiding spots were a killer's hiding spots. My dad was at Marquette University in Milwaukee in the late 80s and early 90s. One of his friends was gay. One night his friend was at a bar and was asked out by an older man, around mid-30s or so. He refused and the guy walked off. A couple weeks later he was at my dad's apartment when he saw the news report on the ongoing Milwaukee murders. When Jeffrey Dahmer's face was shown he immediately recognized him as the guy who'd asked him out. Probably the one about the guy at a local factory who went inside one of the welding machines. I think that's what they are called, to clean or do some kind of maintenance, and somehow despite all the safety protocols another employee kicked it on. Apparently the moment it happened the employee that did it realized his mistake, but there was no way to stop it once it started the firing cycle. Yes, the man inside died pretty quickly, but I cannot imagine being the person who made such a horrible mistake. Before the United States dropped the atomic bomb, its creators believed there was a chance that nuclear fission in the atmosphere might ignite the nitrogen in the atmosphere, causing it to burn off, utterly obliterating Earth and killing every man, woman, and child. So that is how you get Trinity. The military, mostly in secret, tested a nuclear bomb before the bombings in Japan to see if the atmosphere would burn off. When people target pregnant women and cut the baby out of their stomach. I'm not sure if it's scarier to survive that or not. Excavated coffins that have scratch marks inside